For more than 7 centuries, the vast lands of Rus were ruled by the ancient Rurik dynasty, a line that stretched back to the legendary founding of Kievan Rus in the 9th century. But in 1598, Tsar Fyodor Rus dies without leaving an heir. The old dynasty, which had governed for over 700 years, comes to a sudden and tragic end. The country is thrown into complete chaos. False czars emerge. Imposters claim to be descendants of the Rurik family. Sweden and Poland see their chance and invade, each supporting their own candidate for the throne. At one point, Polish troops storm and occupy the Kremlin itself in Moscow, a humiliation the Russians will never forget. Yet the spirit of the people refuses to break. In a powerful popular uprising, led by ordinary citizens and Cossacks, they rise up, drive out the foreign invaders, and reclaim their capital. The time of troubles has left deep scars on the land and the people, but Russia survives. In 1613, with the country still recovering from years of war and devastation, a National Assembly gathers in the Kremlin. Delegates come from every corner of the land: nobles, clergy, merchants, Cossacks, and common people. They are united by one purpose: to choose a new czar and end the chaos. After long debates, they make a historic decision. They place the crown on the head of 16-year-old Michael Romanov, a young noble from an old and respected boyar family. Thus begins the Romanov dynasty, which will rule Russia for over 3 centuries. Michael inherits a nation in ruins, burned cities, empty treasuries, villages destroyed, and foreign armies still occupying parts of Russian soil. The road to rebuilding the state will be long, painful, and full of challenges. While Russia struggles to recover in the west, a new frontier opens in the east. Bold Cossack explorers, fur traders, and adventurers push deeper and deeper into the vast wilderness of Siberia. In 1639, Ivan Moskvitin becomes the first Russian to reach the shores of the Pacific Ocean. 9 years later, in 1648, Semyon Dezhnev sails through the strait that will later bear the name Bering, proving that Asia and America are separated by water. New fortresses and outposts are built across the endless steppes and forests. Local tribes are subdued, and the fur trade begins to bring enormous wealth back to Moscow. In these distant eastern lands, Russia grows quietly and steadily, far from the eyes of Europe, yet expanding with unstoppable momentum. To rebuild the state, refill the treasury, and restore order, the Romanovs impose harsh measures. In the 1640s and 1650s, peasants are permanently bound to the land they work. Full serfdom is established by law. Landlords gain absolute power over their serfs and are made responsible for collecting taxes on behalf of the state. At the same time, the Orthodox Church faces its own crisis. Patriarch Nikon attempts sweeping reforms to bring Russian practices closer to the original Byzantine traditions, but millions of believers refuse to accept the changes and become known as Old Believers. This schism will divide Russian society for centuries and lead to harsh persecution. In 1654, the Cossacks living in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth rise in rebellion against Catholic nobles and the harsh rule of landowners. They also attack Jewish tax collectors. Seeing no other option, the Cossacks turn to Moscow for protection and alliance. Russia answers the call, enters the war, and after a long and bloody struggle lasting more than a decade, defeats Poland. Vast territories, lands that once belonged to Kievan Rus, are annexed and given the name Little Russia by the Russians. The ancient freedoms and privileges of the Cossacks are gradually taken away, and Moscow's control over the region grows ever stronger. In 1689, the young and energetic Peter Wien seizes full power. He is obsessed with the modern world of Western Europe. Disguised as a commoner, he travels incognito to Holland and England. There, he works in shipyards, studies navigation, and learns everything he can about shipbuilding and European technology. His dream is clear: to transform backward Russia into a modern, powerful maritime nation. But there is one major obstacle standing in his way: Sweden, the dominant power in the Baltic Sea. Peter knows that without control of the Baltic coast, Russia will remain cut off from the rest of Europe. Peter forms a grand coalition with Denmark and Saxony against Sweden's brilliant young king, Charles XIII. At first, the war is a disaster for Russia. The Swedes completely crush the Russian army at Narva in 1700. Peter refuses to give up. He rebuilds his army from the ground up, introduces modern training and weapons, and strikes back. In 1703, on land captured from Sweden at the mouth of the Neva River, he founds a new city, St. Petersburg, as his window to the west. In 1709, at the Battle of Poltava, Peter delivers the decisive blow that breaks Swedish power forever. The Baltic coast finally falls into Russian hands. In 1721, peace is signed with Sweden. Peter officially proclaims Russia an empire and takes the title of Emperor. St. Petersburg becomes the new capital, a symbol of Russia's turn toward Europe. He forces his nobles to adopt Western clothing, shaves their traditional beards, and introduces sweeping reforms in administration, the military, and education. His own son, Alexis, who opposes these changes, is arrested and dies in prison. With these reforms, Peter transforms Russia from a backward tsardom into a recognized great European power. Under Empress Elizabeth, Russia joins France and Austria in a war against the rising power of Prussia. Russian armies invade deep into Prussian territory and even occupy Berlin for a time. Victory seems within reach, but everything changes when Elizabeth dies suddenly in 1762. Her nephew, Peter III, who greatly admires the Prussian king Frederick the Great, immediately ends the war and returns all conquered territories without any compensation. The Russian court and army are outraged. Within months, Peter III is overthrown in a palace coup orchestrated by his own wife, the woman who will soon become Catherine the Great. Catherine II, born a German princess, rules Russia from 1762 to 1796 with extraordinary intelligence and iron determination. She crushes a massive Cossack rebellion led by Pugachev that threatens to tear the empire apart. She annexes Crimea in 1783, founds the great naval base of Sevastopol, and opens the port of Odessa on the Black Sea. She also participates in the 3 partitions of Poland, bringing millions of new subjects under Russian rule. Under her reign, the Russian Empire reaches its greatest territorial extent in the West and becomes one of the most powerful states in Europe. In June 1812, Napoleon Bonaparte invades Russia with the largest army Europe has ever seen, more than 600,000 men. The Russians retreat, burn their own villages and crops in a scorched earth policy, and abandon Moscow. The French enter a burning city, but the brutal Russian winter arrives early and mercilessly. Napoleon is forced to retreat. Of his Grande Armée, only about 40,000 soldiers survive the long and deadly march back. Tsar Alexander I pursues the enemy all the way to Paris. In 1814, Napoleon is defeated and exiled. Russia emerges as the liberator of Europe. At the Congress of Vienna in 1815, Russia receives most of the former Duchy of Warsaw and becomes the dominant power in Eastern Europe. Tsar Alexander I creates the Holy Alliance, a pact between the monarchs of Russia, Austria, and Prussia to preserve the old order and prevent any more revolutions like the one in France. Russia now stands as the guardian of the conservative European system. In 1825, Nicholas I ascends the throne. Almost immediately, a group of liberal officers, later known as the Decembrists, attempt a coup to force reforms. Nicholas crushes the revolt with ruthless force. He rules as a strict autocrat, strengthens the secret police, and wages long wars to conquer the Caucasus. He also supports the Greek struggle for independence against the Ottoman Empire. Russia pushes its influence into the Balkans, but Britain, France, and the Ottoman Empire declare war. Modern steamships, rifles, and telegraphs give the Allies a clear advantage. After a long and bloody siege, Sevastopol falls to the Allies. The war exposes Russia's deep weaknesses: serfdom, poor roads, outdated military tactics, and an economy far behind Western Europe. In 1861, Alexander II abolishes serfdom, though peasants must pay for their land over many years. He builds railroads across the empire, reforms the courts and education system, and conquers Central Asia. In 1867, fearing British expansion in the Pacific, he sells Alaska to the United States. The empire is slowly modernizing, but the pace is uneven and the reforms do not satisfy everyone. The reforms anger all sides. Nobles lose their privileges, peasants remain poor, and workers suffer in factories. Radical groups form and become more violent. Several attempts are made on the Tsar's life. In 1881, a bomb finally kills Alexander II in St. Petersburg. Jews are falsely blamed for the attack, triggering waves of pogroms across the empire that force millions to flee to Europe and America. Alexander III, his son, reverses many of his father's reforms, strengthens absolute autocracy, and harshly persecutes minorities. He builds the Great Trans-Siberian Railway and forms a defensive alliance with France against the growing power of Germany. In 1904, Japan defeats Russia's Pacific Fleet and Army in a shocking and humiliating war. The defeat sparks the Revolution of 1905, massive strikes, mutinies in the Navy, and the tragic Bloody Sunday Massacre. Nicholas II is forced to create the Duma, Russia's first parliament, which weakens the absolute power of the monarchy for the first time. Russia makes peace with Britain and joins France and the United Kingdom in the Triple Entente. Across Europe, the great powers continue to arm themselves. Tensions rise, and a world war now seems inevitable. In 1914, Austria-Hungary attacks Serbia. Russia mobilizes to protect its Slavic brothers. Germany declares war on Russia and its allies. St. Petersburg is renamed Petrograd to remove the German-sounding name. The war drags on for years. Millions of soldiers die, food shortages spread across the country, and the home front begins to collapse under the strain. By early 1917, strikes and protests turn into full-scale revolution. Soldiers mutiny and refuse to fire on the crowds. Tsar Nicholas II is forced to abdicate. A provisional government takes power, but it chooses to continue the war, and the suffering of the people only grows worse. In October 1917, Vladimir Lenin and the Bolsheviks seize power in Petrograd in a swift and decisive coup. They immediately sign a peace treaty with Germany, ending Russia's participation in World War I. The Romanov dynasty falls after more than 300 years. The Russian Empire comes to an end forever. A new and revolutionary era begins.